trust in you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's 4 o'clock. It's the first Sunday. It is time for the Empowerment Radio Show, where we equip you for your spiritual journey. I am very excited. So if you see me looking over, I'm excited to have my wonderful sister here with me today in the person of, I'm going to call her Doctor.
Okay.
I'm going to call her Dr. Jermai Harrison, who is just a wonderful, wonderful person, full of compassion. Her humanity is it just exudes in everything that she does and everywhere that she goes and everything that she touches. So we're very, very excited to have her here today. I'm going to attempt to read her bio for those of you who did not see it on Facebook or my social media pages, but I am going to just read her bio. It doesn't even do her justice. So once you hear her, you will know. So Jermai Harrison, LMHC, has a heart for reaching the souls of those who have at one point in their life struggled to maintain along their life's journey. Jermai is the founder and operator of A Fighting Chance Counseling Services, which was birthed and launched in August of 2020. She is a licensed mental health therapist, counseling business owner, transitional life coach, associate minister, youth leader, podcast host, and graduate of Eastern Nazarene College with a master's degree in marriage and family therapy. Jermai makes it a mission to minister to those who have been misunderstood, misplaced, overlooked, or abandoned, and wants them to know that you are not alone. With a passion in youth development, mental health awareness, strengthened communities, and complete wholeness, Jermai has spent most of her career finding ways to build stronger individuals to enhance healthier communities. As a Christian counselor, it is always important to remind everyone an investment in your soul is one of the most beneficial investments you will ever make in life. Whether it be through her professional career, her personal life, or ministry, Jermai hopes that everyone who encounters her also encounters the love of God. It is because of him that she is effective and does not want to exclude God from anything that she does in her life. So at this time, I'm going to turn the floor over to Evangelist Dr. Right Reverend Jermai Harrison.
Hey everyone, that was just a very long way of saying I am just a voice in the wilderness, trying to spread mental health awareness amongst the world. Yes. But thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Not a problem at all. So I had already talked to her and I told her, I said, I know that she is a person who she flows freely. And I love that about her. She's able to have a conversation. You heard that she's a podcaster. She's a coach. So all of these things, I would just love to hear, Jermai, from your perspective, just how did your journey start? And there's no time limit other than the hour that we have. But how did your journey start? What propelled you? What kind of like called you to this mission?
Honestly, it had to be God, because I am extremely introverted and I always look at myself like I was supposed to be the one in the back, because that's what my mom does, right? My mom is very much in the background as a secretary doing things. And I said, okay, I can do that. And God was like pushing me forward. And, I struggled a long time with just staying in my comfort zone. And I believe that it was from the age of 12 where God is like, but I need you to do mental health. I had a best friend growing up, and something she said to me that always rang home with me was that every day is a fight. Right, because she had bipolar and depression and some anxiety. And she was just saying that every day was a fight. And so since then, I would just continue the conversation. And then so I knew I wanted to do mental health because I said, if everyone's coming to me for advice, I might as well get paid to do this thing. And so, undergrad was great, but then I kind of graduated and I said, okay, so now what? I know I love working with young people and I know I love to do mental health, but how do I combine the two? So years I was just doing residential programs. I worked at a teen program, a residential, and then I worked at, some mental health clinics, and I was just like, okay, these both are cool, but I still don't know what I'm doing. And it wasn't until I found Eastern Nazarene where it allowed me to combine my passion for Christ and my passion for mental health together. Once I graduated from there, I said, oh, okay, now it's starting to make sense. Like the fog is clearing where I can do both ministry and career and combine the two because, I didn't want to do ministry over here and career over here. I was like, God, I need these two worlds to collide. And so in 2018, I was searching for work, and I thought A Fighting Chance was supposed to be a group. And I said, okay, God, I'm going to do this group. And it was like, no, that got shut down. I said, okay. I tried to make it another group at the program that I started to work at. And it was like, no, it's bigger than a group. And I said, okay, this is annoying. Like, I want this and it's not happening. I don't know what to do. I think God was really trying to get me to see that my vision was too small. My vision was as a peephole. He's like, I need you to widen your perspective and understand that what I have for you is bigger than what you can conceive right now. You can't conceptualize it right now, but if you trust me enough to do it, it'll be done. So in 2020, the pandemic happened. And unfortunately, the place that I was at had to close, and my supervisor sat me down. She's a woman of faith. She sat me down and she said, Jermai, it's time. I was like, time for what? We're leaving. I know. She's like, no. You know what I'm saying? And I said, oh God, here we go. So she continued to minister to me. It was like, God is calling you just because you have to sever this tie here. It's making a room for you to do that. And I said, Miss Ma'am, like, I know how to counsel. That's great. I know how to talk to people even better. And business owner? I don't see that yet, because I'm like, finances, what are those? Business savvy, how do you do it? Making this legal where you're not getting sued, how do you do that? And when you step out on faith, God will order the steps, right? So I felt like Peter walking on water, like, God, if that's you out there, I'm coming. I can't see anything that I'm doing, but I'm coming. And 2 years and 5 months later, we're here. So
that's amazing. And, one of the things that resonated with me is what you said was, how do you make that connection? You felt the pull, you felt the tug, and you said, well, how do I marry these two things?
Yeah.
How do I, hook these up? How do I get these together? And you've done a phenomenal job. I just heard you say Thank 2 years and 5 months.
Yeah.
How many people can say that they have a thriving business, and especially with mental health now, it's to me, I feel like it's just now being talked about. It was, especially in the church, you being a Christian counselor, it was such a taboo thing. You couldn't talk about it. You were going to get labeled. You should have faith, and I want you to also touch on, if say I was a person who, maybe I'm newly in the church, but I'm struggling with some things. And what advice would you give them to seek out mental health? And a lot of these people, I know I can say, are coming to churches who are just now beginning to open up about mental health. So they might be frightened, or they may be scared to talk about these subjects, or let people even know that they have questions about it. What type of advice would you give a person like that?
I think I would start off by saying that God works with imperfect people. You can be broken, you can be unhealed, and God says, but come to me. I think I had this conversation so many times, but what is taboo is that we think everything's a demon. and everything can be blamed on Satan. And it's like, well, maybe, but life happens to all of us, right? Yeah. And I believe that there's so many times in our lives where God has saved us from something, and even though we're delivered, sometimes our mind takes a while to catch up, right? So when God changes us and he says, I'm going to make you a new creature, it's like those old habits, those old cravings, those old places will still be calling your name. Just because God delivered you doesn't mean that Satan's going to stop trying to get you, right? And so oftentimes we're battling between what the flesh desires and wants versus what the Spirit is leading me to do. And honestly, that's what it really is. It's when flesh and spirit are having that internal battle, like Paul was saying, like there's a war in my flesh. Yes. Right? That war in the flesh is also mental health, right? It's like, I know God asked me to do this, but everything in me is saying that, and I don't know how to do the things. When things are not aligned, it can cause a mental illness, right? We get anxious because, I want to serve God and I want to do it right. But then old habits keep creeping in, right? Or God will take us out of the places and we have overcome a lot. And it's just sad because oftentimes we have to sometimes walk alone in this walk with God, right? Where old friends are no longer conducive to this new thing that God is doing, and making that separation, it often messes with people, right? So, I think we need to normalize the fact that mental health can happen to all of us, right? Yes. If you are ill, you're not going to not go to a doctor. You're not going to say like, it's okay. God's going to deliver me. And I think the problem with the church is that we always say like, just pray about it and God will do it. Right? Right. But what happens when he doesn't do it the way that you want it to? Then we're losing believers. We're losing people because we gave them the idea and the concept. If you pray, God will remove it. Right. But we have an example in Paul. There was a thorn and he went to God 3 times. And God said, but my grace is sufficient for you. Meaning no matter what the pain is, understand that I'm going to grace you through it. And when we look at our pain through the lens of God, we say like, okay, God, if I must have this, help me to know what I have to do with it, and help me to go to the right doctors, seek the right medication, talk to the right people, surround myself with the right people so that I can continue to walk the way that you have called me to walk.
No, I think that was excellent. Especially, when you were saying that, the perfect example, when you're sick, you go to the doctor. You're sick enough, you're going to go to the doctor. Why do we then switch up when it has to do with mental health? All of a sudden, you don't have any faith. Right. And I've heard that a lot in the church. And it's just, a lot of times it's just church culture. Yeah. It's tradition where, people will say, you shouldn't do that. You need to have faith. You just need to have faith. And like you said, you just need to pray. Yeah. And, that's a demon. I mean, we call everything a demon. We call everything a demon. And it's like, no, really, it's like the person has some anxiety issues, know, or maybe they're anxious. And there are people, in the church with all different types of levels of mental health. Yeah. Everybody has a little something. Yeah. And now I'm so grateful for whether it was the pandemic that brought things to light and, made people more aware and made people be able to kind of pivot and change whether they wanted to or not. Yeah. I think that now it has made such a more conducive atmosphere in the church for us to kind of segue into, okay, now we can talk about mental health. Yeah. It's not such a stigma. No. It's not such a, a taboo that we can't speak about it. We can't talk about it. Now we're having clinics, we're having, seminars and things, which we never, before it would be like, I'm not going to that seminar because they're going to think something's wrong with me. Right. And you don't want anything to be wrong with you. But then again, you're already broken, like you said. You're in the church. The church is a hospital. So you're supposed to be coming there anyway. Like, it doesn't add up. So I appreciate your perspective on, how you're dealing with clients and how you're dealing with people. And just, you get it. You understand, how these people feel. And, I never want to say these people because I'm one of the people. We're all these people. True. But the labels and the stigmas, I think, just create such a barrier for people that really, really need the help.
Yeah.
And they really want the help, but they can't get past the label. They can't get past the person looking down on them. I loved in your bio, and I have a similar kindred ministry where I just really feel for, I call it the underdog.
Oh, yeah.
The person who nobody wants to bother with. Nobody wants to deal with them. Nobody even wants to look at them. Nobody wants to sit next to them. Nobody wants to touch them. And those are the people that God is using. And how dare we just scoff at them, toss them aside. These are beautiful people in the kingdom. They could be doing so much. They could be adding so much to people's houses of worship. Yeah. But we just look at them. Oh, that's the crazy one in the corner. Don't deal with her. Don't talk to him. He's crazy. He's cray cray. And all of those terms, and it's like we have to be so gentle and so careful. Because everybody is somebody in the kingdom.
Absolutely.
And to know that there are programs like yours out there, it does something to my heart, because it's a ministry that's so needed, and it's lacking in most of the churches, because again, it's just now okay to even talk about it. But my mind goes back to, wow, what if we had this 20-something years ago? There's probably so many people that could have benefited, but we were so busy, stuck in ourselves and stuck in our ways and stuck in our traditions that we weren't able to offer help to people. And again, that's something that, is also church culture, where we think we have it all. We think we know it all, and we're saved, so nobody can tell us anything.
Right.
But if you think you've already arrived, that's a person who's not going anywhere.
True. Not
going anywhere. And so I was just going to ask you just a few questions. And again, I don't want to forget that we do have a call-in number. I would love for people to call in. The number here, you can call anytime, is 617-282-0685. Again, that's 617-282-0685. And like I said, the doctor is in the house. The Dr. Jermai is here. She is in the house. So, take advantage, people. Take advantage of this great and wise counsel that she's offering. And again, her spirit is just the spirit of compassion and humility that you have, and that's on your life. And it's an anointing. It's not a talent. It is a true anointing and calling of God, and that you exude it. As I said earlier, just you walk in the room, people know. I was telling you before we came in, there's a sister at my church who said she doesn't know you, but she has been in your presence, and she felt that calmness.
Wow.
She felt the presence, and it was the presence of God.
Yeah.
She felt the presence of God.
Wow.
And so if you could just talk to us about, what age would you say that you knew you were called to counseling? Was there, any specific thing that happened, or did you kind of, some people slide into things, or they were doing something else, and then they said, "Hey, I'm good at this. I feel comfortable here. I feel good here. I feel like, this is where my ministry is leading me." If you could speak to that a little bit.
So like I said, when I was 12, I kind of saw the vision, but it didn't make sense, because I said, I don't want to sit and listen to people's problems. And, I said something that I've always asked God is like, God, if this is you, show it to me the way that you did with Abraham. It wasn't just one sign he gave.
Right.
It happened throughout the 25 years, right? So it was that. And then there were times where I'm on the bus, because, public transportation was a thing until the Lord blessed me with a vehicle. Hallelujah. So there were times on the bus where people would just come and just like dump and just say, I don't know why I'm telling you this, but And I said, oh, okay, great. Yep, we're going to try to help. And then there was a time when I was in grad school at Eastern Nazarene. One of my professors, I love him and his approach, but he was a sassy one. He said, "You think differently, don't you?" And I said, "Well, yes, I do. What are you trying to say?" Because I guess I was doing a presentation, and he was like, "I don't know why you think the way that you do, but I know God's going to use it. I don't know how you can conceptualize things in a different type of way, but God's going to use that." And, from that point on, I said, okay, so this is it, right?
This is it.
And the reason why, my ministry is for them, I call them the misfits of the world, is because we don't always fit, but God has a place for us, right? Yeah. And it was because of all of those signs that God gave me where I said, okay, so now I get it. Now it makes sense. Now, like I said, the fog is being cleared. Like, I have to reach those who people have thrown out for whatever reason. If it's because of the mental health, if it's because they're just misunderstood. It's like we are losing too many souls because people are trying to conform us. Exactly. Right? And they use that scripture. Well, we're not trying to make you conform to the world. It's like, but you're making me conform to religion. Ooh. And I thought that with God, it was relationship, not necessarily religion. Yes, I heard a preacher say, like, God doesn't want servants, he wants friends. Right? And so if I think that because I am if I have blonde locks and I wear very bold clothes and I have earrings in my ears, like, religion says she's not it. Religion says she's not called. But relationship said, I'm going to use that though. Right? If he can use Peter, a very out there, ready to cut someone, literally, if he can use someone like that, if he can turn Saul into Paul, if he can turn an adulterer into a king, why can't he use someone like me to do his work? Right? Not all vessels look the same because all vessels have different purposes. And I was created, and it took me a while to realize who I am. I was created for such a time as this, to reach the young and the old, and to break generational curses that exist in not just the brown and black communities, but in the church as well. Like, when people don't want to confront the trauma and don't want to confront those things that no longer allow for healing, that's why every generation looks the same. It just gets a little more complicated and a little more heavy. And I'm like, okay, guys, like, we can continue to do this, or we can do something different. Like, something I always like to say is, I heard this story about this mom who at Thanksgiving was cutting off both sides of the ham. And then her daughter said, well, Mom, why do you do that? She's like, I don't know, because my mama did it. So then she goes to Grandma and she's like, Grandma, why do you cut off both sides? She's like, I don't know, because my mother did it. So she goes to the great-grandmother and says, Mima, why does this happen? She's like, girl, they didn't have pants that big when I was growing up. Right? And so we just continue habits not knowing why, because we don't ask the questions. And it's like, why do we have all of these resources now, but we're living as if we're still without from back then? Right? Yes. So if you have the resource to change, why not use that?
That was pivotal. That was pivotal for me, because especially when you use that analogy, it's like when you actually go back and check these things out, there's usually not even a rhyme or a reason to it. It's just like she's like the great grandmother or whatever was like, well, we didn't have pants big enough. So you keep doing something. You perpetuate this trend, and you perpetuate this habit, and nobody asked the question. No one asked the question, say, well, that's what they did, I'm going to do it the same way. And that's how it is, in the churches. And so things like that are the reason why mental health cannot be shared and utilized in the church, because you've got, this culture who's saying that it's taboo, it's bad, you don't have any faith. Read your scriptures, read your Bible, and it will all go away. And it won't. And, and I loved also, too, what you said about, different vessels. We're so concerned about, like, how this vessel looks. And how, and it's like, it doesn't even make any sense. I always talk about, colors. I'm the same way. I love really bright colors. I don't always get to wear them, but I'm a bright colored person. And I've read the Bible. I've read through it. I don't remember anywhere in the Bible that it said like a certain color was like taboo.
Right.
Like, I don't know where the scripture is. Please tell me that says red is taboo.
Yeah.
Green is taboo.
Yeah.
Black and gray are okay. Like, Joseph's coat was many colors.
Yeah.
It was probably bright. It was probably loud. It probably had, I don't know, all neon. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But again, that's some kind of tradition.
Yeah.
Maybe an old wives' tale that somebody told and said, oh, if they have on this, you can't listen to them. I know back in the day, someone was telling me that they asked the question to somebody if a certain person either had on a certain thing or had certain jewelry or whatever, what would you do if they tried to minister to you? And the person immediately said, well, I wouldn't listen to them. And I'm like, wait a minute. Like, who knows what that person had to say?
Yeah.
Who knows what that person's ministry could have done, could have healed, could have delivered, but we turned it away because the package didn't look like the package that we were, for whatever reason, we were used to seeing. Right. And so we immediately shot it down. We immediately cut it down and said, nope. Can't look at that package. Can't look at it. Can't listen to it. Can't receive anything from it because all they saw, like you said, was that vessel. And every vessel is used for something different.
Absolutely.
Every vessel is used for something different. So I really feel like that spoke to, starting to break these barriers, starting to tear down these walls, and they're really just fake. A lot of them are really just fake. People have their walls up around them, but a lot of these things in the church culture, and just dealing specifically with the church, they're false. Yeah. But people just don't know it because nobody's eyes are open. It's like the scales need to come off. Yeah. And people need to be able to know, hey, you can talk to people about mental health or issues that you're having or things that you're feeling and you're wondering, is this right? Yeah, I wanted to get into, and I'm not sure how much, but I'm sure you deal with it a lot. There's a lot of suicide in the church, within the church, pastors, leaders, members, congregants, dealing with suicidal thoughts. I know a study was done a few years ago, and so don't quote me on the exact percentages, but it was something like 40% of the congregation of any church that you picked was dealing with some type of mental illness. And when we heard those numbers, I was like, whoa, wait a minute. So like if there was 10 people, 4 of them are struggling in some type of way. Yeah. And again, we have someone like you who's right here in the church, can deal with this stuff, which can combat these things, and people still won't open their mouths. So if you could talk to a little bit about maybe your approach, without disclosing, anything in your business, but maybe your approach to your clients. How do you meet them? Do you meet them where they are? Do you go through goals with them? How do you talk to them in a way that I know you're so compassionate? So I would love to hear anything that you could disclose that would just help somebody that was listening as to how you approach the person. Yeah.
First and foremost, people need a safe space to land. The reason why some church folks do not share what they're going through and they choose, to complete a suicide attempt is because no one created a safe space. Wow. And they always looked at themselves like, I can't share this because I'm going to get judged. Yeah. And if I show you my brokenness, if I expose my infirmities, you're going to label me and you're going to shoo me away. Yes. There's a lot of things that people are struggling with in the church. And there's no answer other than pray about it. Let's take a dip in the baptismal pool. Let me throw oil at you. And it's like, that's not a safe space. A safe space is the opportunity to look at a person, sit with a person, and see them. Yes. Right? I tell my clients all the time, like, I see you and I hear you. And God cares about everything. Every hair on your head, every tear that you cried, every moan that you let out, every sleepless night that you have had, God's seen it, and there's an answer for that. Yes. But if I don't allow them to emote, and if I don't allow them to just have that space, they won't come back. Right?
No, that's very true.
And when you make them feel safe, when people are safe, they're more inclined to open and to share. Yes. Right? So first and foremost, create the safe space. Secondly, be compassionate. I think sometimes, please invite me back, y'all.
Oh, definitely. Part 2.
Sometimes church folk forget where they came from, forget where God delivered them from. And so they are quick to judge. They are quick to label. And that's what shoos people away as well. It's like if I come to you and say, for some time, I thought that women were beautiful. And it's like, oh no, homosexuality is a sin and you will be you're an abomination. It's like, well, thank you. I already felt that. So now you further made me walk to the proverbial cliff. Yeah. You didn't help me walk off it. You didn't receive me. You just kind of looked at me and condemned me. Right. And so create the safe space and offer a listening ear and like a supportive shoulder. Some people just need a place where they will not feel judged, where they will not feel like emasculated if you're a man or promiscuous if you're a female or whatever it is. They need to know, like, I have a place to go where it's safe and I'm being received. Yes. And again, the reason why it's hard to recognize it is because people can put on a mask all the time. People wear masks because they come into a church where the message is you have to be this in order for God to use you. And when we never measure up, that's defeating. Like, people are losing hope because it's like, well, God, you want all of this for me, and here I am. And this is not that. It's and daunting. I keep falling short, right? And I think, again, it comes with a prosperous message where it's like, God's going to bless you with $1 million and a man and a baby and a house and a car. But if I'm over there in the shelter taking the bus to a part-time job and having to stand in line for the food stamps, does that mean God is not with me? According to the message that is preached, yes. Right. But that's not it. We misrepresent God way too much. Ooh. And the people push people away from God because we let flesh take over. And we are misrepresenting the good God that is gracious, and he is able to save all people. And even if he doesn't remove the infliction, he can still bless you with it. Yes. And people don't get that message. And so it's like we have to debunk these narratives that are created in the church where it's like, if you like, all have fallen sin. We forget that scripture, right? All have fallen short and sinned because we are fleshly people. But if we keep condemning people for being fleshly, I mean, just remember, God had to do a work on you too.
Yes. No, that was really powerful. Just everything that you said there, and what just stuck with me, what you just said was debunk the narrative. Yeah. Just debunk it. Yeah. Debunk that narrative. And, when you talked about how people just want to be supportive. Yeah. And they want that safe space. And if they know, because at that point you've gained their trust. Yeah. You've gained their trust, and you're not just kind of throwing the Bible at them or just throwing things at them, or like you said, just like, go down, we're going to dip you down the pool, we're going to slap some oil on you, we're going to do all these things. And it's like, to me, that's like you're telling them that it's like this magic trick thing that you're doing, and boom, we did that to you. You should be good now, and they still feel awful. And like you said, you've pushed them further to that cliff that they were already thinking about. Yeah. So now, again, they walk away judged. They walk away feeling stupid, probably lonely, just probably worse than they were at the beginning. So, you know, we as saints and as congregants, as ministers, as elders, pastors, need to really start to look within ourselves. And like you said, remember where you came from. Yeah. And just because you didn't do whatever sin it is that they're doing doesn't mean that you did something. And here's the thing. Whether you did anything, if you were not born again, you were in sin.
There it is.
You were in sin. Just being born. We're born in sin. Yeah. So these people who act like, you know, they were saved from the womb, they came out speaking in tongues, they've never done anything. Right. That's got to go. Right. It's got to go. And, you know, and even if you do feel like you're that person, until you came to Christ, you were in sin too. So that's it. Stop it. That's it. We really have to stop. I mean, debunk that narrative.
Yeah, because the narratives is what carries the pain. It's what carries the trauma. If people say, I'm coming to church to be healed, and you are inflicting trauma, they're like, what? So what's the difference between here and there? What's the difference between me walking to God where I can't even get through the door because the moment I walk in and I'm not wearing the right clothes, or I might smell of marijuana, it's like, everyone is making a face at me. I'm going to turn around and be like, I might as well stay where I just was, because at least over there someone accepted me. Yeah. Right. And it's these narratives, and it's like, trust and believe. I hold my clients accountable for their stuff. I can't say like, choose life and think that that's a one-time choice. Yeah. When God said, I put before you life and death, choose life, but I mean the choice is yours, we have this assumption that that's just a one-time thing. Every day I got to wake up and I have to choose life. Yes. Every day I wake up, I have to choose God. Every day I wake up, I have to choose to do the work. And if I do not, I am widely aware that Satan will come in with his little sly self and start to put a wedge between my healing and my God, or between me and my like deliverance or whatever it is, right? And if I don't choose life every single day, I can't blame my mother for what she did 20 years ago.
Right, you can't.
Like at some point, I have to look at the person in the mirror, and this is what I do in counseling. It's like, yes, what happened to you happened, and trauma, it like kind of rewires how we process and understand things. But if there are people who can help us to unwire the rewire, if you will, it's like, let's go to them. Because if not, I'm going to carry everything where now I hate people who wear red. Right. My mother used to like beat me when she wore red. Right. Or I hate the smell of pancakes because the abusive dad was always cooking pancakes. And we're just like, why am I always triggered? It's like, let's track back. Let's find the root and let's uproot it. I think people feel like if I cut down the tree, then I'll be fine. It's like, no, that same tree is going to grow and probably twice as worse. You got to get to the root, unroot it, and then get yourself together.
I mean, it sounds simple.
It's not.
But it's not. But it's not. No. It's not. And no. I know that, you know, you're in a very tough and trying. If you could talk about your own emotion. So I know when I was probably in junior high, I've always wanted to be an architect. I never kind of deviated from that since nursery school. So, but in the 7th grade, for like a couple of weeks, I was like, I think I could do like psychology, you know, because I still love the mind, and I love to know why and how people work. I love people. So I really enjoy that. But I know one thing that probably I assume would happen to me is, how do you, as the counselor, not take on all of the issues and all of the traumas and all of the triggers that your clients have? How are you able to kind of separate that from, because I know I'm the type of person, my compassion level is like, I see somebody on the street, I'm like crying the next day, like, oh my God, I wonder what happened to that guy I saw in the subway yesterday. I wonder if he's okay.
Yeah.
So if you could talk to us about how you're able to separate that and not take it on, but take it on enough to help the person, but not take it on and then you get saturated with it. How do you separate that?
I throw it to God.
That's excellent.
That is like, when I'm in this session, I say, ooh, God, that's heavy. Like, I don't go into a session without God with me, because books can only teach you so much. Life can only teach you so much. And I'm in the work of the soul, right? Mm-hmm. And so who better to address soul problems than the one who created it? So I go into my session, I say, God, like, there are some, like when I had older clients, I said, I don't have a response for that. So I would say, okay, God, so can you like talk to that? Because I don't know what to say. And so oftentimes I literally have to pass it to God. When I first started, I was feeling everything. I said, God, I can't. I'm such a bad clinician. Like, what did I even say? Like, I probably just made it worse. And I literally had to be like, all right, Jermai, if God trusted you with this, like, yes, the degrees are there and the license is there. But I'm like, God, I can't do this without you. Like, you, first of all, you called me to this. You made me effective in this. And so I'm just going to pass it to you. It's kind of like a hot potato. I say that all the time where my client's like, here, take this. I'm like, and I throw it to God because I said, ooh, I got enough problems. Jermai is quite the emotional person. And so when they throw it to me, I said, I pass it along like an assembly line. I said, Lord, here you go. Help me to know what I have to deal with it. Help me to decipher and have the discernment and the understanding of what I have to work with for the next session or by the end of this session. But I said, here you go, sir. Like, you just pass it on.
No, that's great. And I mean, that's great advice for anything, is to have the ability to be able to recognize that, you know what, God, this is too much for me. Mm-hmm. This is too heavy. Mm-hmm. This is not what I'm supposed to be carrying it.
Yeah.
And he said to cast our cares, to lay our burdens. Mm-hmm. And for you to be able to recognize that is just, I know, so important in the work that you do, that you don't take it on. Mm-hmm. Because if you get in that state, you're not going to be able to help anybody. Yeah. But to be able to, I want my listeners and my audience out there to, take these things in. You don't have to be a clinician. The things that she's talking about can apply to our everyday lives. And just the fact that you said the first thing you do when something's heavy like that is you immediately throw it to God. I need to take that advice. I'm going through some things. We're all going through things. Yeah. And I feel like sometimes things are just so heavy and like, what am I going to do with it? And you get this weight and you feel like you have this suitcase or you have this noose around your neck of like this thing that's weighing you down. And God's right there. Like, he's waiting for it. He's like, I'm open. Like, I'm open over here. Throw it to me. Yeah. So I got that one. Yeah. Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you for that. Another thing I wanted to talk with you about was along the areas of your compassion level. And like I said, I see it on you. I've always seen it on you. How does that work and kind of interlock in your business? Your compassion level alone. How do you, I guess I would say, orchestrate that into your business, every aspect, and then afterwards, I'd like you, if you could, to kind of segue into more of what you talked about at the beginning of how you even started your business. So first, just, how your compassion level, how that spreads into your business.
I mean, my clients give me feedback often. And something that they appreciate is that I give them the space. And I tell them, I'm like, you're in the driver's seat and I'm in the passenger seat. And sometimes I'm in the back and God's in the passenger seat and I'm in the back, because I think they're so used to seeing how they think therapy works because they've seen it on TV. And it's like,
the couch.
Yeah. And it's like, I'm sorry, this is just a conversation. Like, I'm not trying to analyze your dreams unless that's what you want. And, you know, I think God gave me the ability to see the pain and the person. And understand. It's almost like, it's going to sound really weird, but you know how in Black Panther, when Shuri had I can't remember his name, the colonizer dude, the Navy SEALs guy, right? And she was able to like see the spine and see where the bullet was. Again, this is going to sound weird, but I feel like that's how God shows me the pain of the person. Ooh. And I feel like when I see that pain, I understand the person, right? Yeah. But then I also have to understand the person outside of the pain.
Yes, the and person outside of the pain.
Yeah, because people identify with their pain. Even in the Bible, the lame man, the blind man, the woman with the issue of blood, they are identified by their problem. And I have to tell them, like, separate it, because God didn't call you crippled. God called you by name. Yes. And so if that's what God is doing, and I call myself a child of God, I have to do the same thing. I'm not going to call you anxiety Susan. Right. I'm not going to call you depressed Dan. I'm going to call you your name and be like, this is what we're working on. And it's because of that compassion and that empathy that they really feel seen enough to give me their stuff. Like, I've had clients who have been in and out of therapy, and they say, I don't know what it is about you, but something works. I said, well, you know, that's God. Yes. But thank you. And so going back to how it all started, honestly, people scare the mess out of me. And again, because I'm introverted, and I said, God, I don't know. Like, no. I think seeing how God can use anybody, and seeing that when I thought less of myself, God is like, oh, but there's so much more. Yeah. I trusted him over my inabilities. I trusted him over my doubt. I trusted him that, God, if you're going to use me as a vessel, you're going to have to take care of it, right? If God says, this is what I want you to do, I'm like, God, cool. But, send the provision, send the understanding, send the wisdom, because they're not coming to me just because I look cute and I have a nice smile. Like, they're coming because they are burdened and weighed down. And at first that was like problems. I love doing problems, like math and science. Those were my joints back in school. Like, I said, I'm going to be a marine biologist or I don't know, something else. And so solving problems was what I loved to do. But I said, but Lord, these are delicate people. Yeah. Like, these just aren't people that I run into in Walmart that I have to interact with for like maybe 5 minutes. People are coming to me with burdens and pains and familial curses and generational like dysfunction. And I said, you want me to do what, sir? But then he brought me, and again, this is how me and God work, right? May not make sense, but stay with me, right? That scripture that says, I plant, Apollos waters, but it's God who does the increase. Mm-hmm. He's like, Jermai, I just need you to do one of those two, and then trust me with the rest. Ooh. And I said, okay, I can do one, because before I was like, you want me to do all of that? Sir, no. And he's like, I just need you to do one. If you're the planter, here's the seeds, now plant it. Yes. If in other people I have to water, great. But he's like, but you have to trust me with the rest. And so in these sessions, I'm like, well, God, I have an hour. Here we go. And then I say, whatever needs to happen, I trust you with the rest.
That's powerful. Powerful.
I have a question. I'm supposed to be engineering, but one, I'm just so glad that she's here, because we do need Christian mental health counselors, yes. People that you can go to, and I often disclose that I have a therapist, and I think that as believers, I'm a pastor, but I need that. Yeah. With that said, it's really challenging to find people who will embrace who are believers
Yep.
and can bring that into the counseling
Yes.
session. And so I'm curious for those who might be tuned into the broadcast who might be interested in being able to utilize. I don't know if you're filled up and you can't take no more clients, but if you're not, how people can access you because it's such a unique blend. A believer who has the training and incorporates. I need both.
Yes.
So can you share with our listening and viewing audience how they can reach you and if you do take more clients?
Yes, I am taking clients. It might be a while because my schedule's all over the place, but I am on Facebook, Fighting Chance Counseling Services. My website is www.fightingchancecounseling.com. I am on Instagram of Fighting Chance Counseling Services. I had a podcast going. I'm trying to get this YouTube thing going. We're just going to get that going. We're going to get it going. So I can't give you the YouTube because I don't know what it's called yet. But Facebook, Instagram, my email is fightingchancecounselingcs@gmail.com. Yeah, I'm around.
Outstanding. My other last question for you is, so when it comes to mental health, as you said, the church is now embracing. It's starting to embrace. Let me say, right. Addressing mental health, because as you said, right, everything's demonic. Everything's just and we believe in the power of prayer. We believe, With that said, so with addressing mental health, particularly coming out of the pandemic. So when people have been isolated and a lot of stuff that preceded the pandemic has been exacerbated now in this stage of the pandemic.
Yeah.
So what I'm curious is so when you're dealing with people who have either a mental illness that is they're not wanting to embrace a diagnosis or medication. And they may come to church and you may embrace them, but they're not taking their medication because they don't really want to embrace that I need it. And they start to feel better because they're taking the medication. And so then they're like, I don't need this. And then they use the scripture. It's God and my faith and I don't need that. I'm not embracing that. But they're not acting healthy because they're off their meds. And so how would you, I'm grieved quite candidly because I don't feel the church is equipped. In many instances, people come with mental illness, and because having those conversations, and when they start to speak things, i.e., they have a person of obsession. Maybe it's the pastor. I want to meet with the pastor. I got to meet with the pastor. You know what I'm saying? And if I can't get a meeting with them, then they may say something that's threatening. I'm going to come in and shoot them. I mean, something like that.
Yeah.
But how does one deal with this as a threat, and you don't want them in the space when they're giving threats? And they've disclosed, they've articulated that. So now you're responsible to act in some kind of way, almost like mandatory, mandated reporters.
Yes.
So when somebody says that, so how do we deal with that? How does a church be equipped to be able to deal with someone who has, identified mental illness as not on medication? And this one particular situation where the pastor actually told the person, I need you to go to your, to get an evaluation, go to your doctor and come back and we'll support you. But they didn't want to come back with that clearance or that saying the doctor, I'm getting treatment, I'm okay. So then they don't come back. How do we grapple with that as the church?
That's a heavy question. I would say look at the diagnosis different.
Okay.
I think a diagnosis for me is just insurance purposes, but it also helps me to guide the nature of the conversation. In order for me to do my work effectively, I have to know what I'm trying to treat, right? So the same thing, like if you went to a doctor and you said, oh, something in my side is hurting, and he's like, well, you have kidney failure. By no means are you going to ignore the kidney and say, oh, but my headache though. Like, can we just talk about my head? And it's like, but the problem's the kidneys, not your head. Mine's is in reverse, right? So sometimes the diagnosis is literally just going to help me to focus on what it is that we need to treat and what it is we need to work on. I feel like if you're seeking an answer, the diagnosis is an answer. But when people look at a diagnosis as a helpless decree over my life, of course you're not going to be one to call depressed or manic or bipolar or anything like that. But when you have the answer, you know what you can do to work for it. You know the specifics of, okay, so these mood swings with the bipolar diagnosis, I might need a mood stabilizer. But if you only ignore one half and you go on an antidepressant, you're going to be low all the time, right? Or in the opposite, you're going to be high all the time. You need something to balance the two, but you wouldn't know that if you don't get a diagnosis, right? And again, it's like if we can do all of this work for the physicalities of everything, right? When people are trying to lose weight, they say you have to both eat better and go to the gym.
Yeah.
You can't just take a pill and say like, okay, I don't have to go to therapy. It's like the pill curbs the symptoms, but it doesn't get rid of the problem. And I think for too long in the medical field, we're dealing with symptoms and not the problem.
Wow.
In counseling, we try to do both. And if medication helps to curb the symptoms, that means I as a therapist can now do the problem work effectively. Right? You can't just do one without the other. Sometimes you can be in therapy for days, but I'm not with you in the middle of the night when you're panicking. There's medication to help you decrease those panic episodes and those panic attacks, right? So for the church, I feel like we need to have the resources where if a pastor is overwhelmed, because I know a lot of you are, and the pastor's like, well, I have the training, but not really. But there's someone who does, I'm going to endorse that in the church. Maybe I'm going to have a Bible study where we have these conversations and we outsource and we bring people in. So there's the resources are there. I just don't think we tap into them. And people like me, you know, we can make ourselves more available, and hopefully we will.
Thank you. You got to come back again.
Yes. I already told her she will be back.
Yay.
She will be back. So again, quickly, we want to thank Minister, right, Reverend Doctor, Evangelist, Elder Priest.
Oh, jeez, those are titles.
Jermai for gracing us, and you know, to be able to come here and talk about such a delicate subject in such a graceful way, and make it something that people can embrace, and that the conversation is started. So we are definitely going to have part 2.
Yay!
So thank you, and everybody out there. This is the Empowerment Radio Show, equipping you for your spiritual needs, and we will see you again next month. First Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Awesome.
Good night.
Bye.